Hello, good evening. We are back with today's story from R.K. Narayan's compilation titled Malgudi Days. And today's story is titled Out of Business. Start. Little over a year ago, Ramarao went out of work when a gramophone company, of which he was the Malgudi agent, went out of existence. He had put into that agency the little money he had inherited as security. For 5 years, his business brought him enough money, just enough, to help him keep his wife and children in good comfort. He built a small bungalow in the extension and was thinking of buying an old baby car for his use. And one day, it was a bolt from the blue. The crash came. A series of circumstances in the world of trade, commerce, banking, and politics was responsible for it. The gramophone company, which had its factory somewhere in North India, automatically collapsed when a bank in Lahore crashed, which was itself the result of a Bombay financier's death. The financier was driving downhill when his car flew off sideways and came to rest 300 feet below the road. It was thought that he had committed suicide because the previous night his wife eloped with his cashier. Ramarao suddenly found himself in the streets. At first, he could hardly understand the full significance of this collapse. There was a little money in the bank and he had some stock on hand. But the stock moved out slowly, the prices were going down, and he could hardly realize a few hundred rupees. When he applied for the refund of his security, there was hardly anyone at the other end to receive his application. The money in the bank was fast melting. Ramarao's wife now tried some measures of economy. She sent away the cook and the servant, withdrew the children from a fashionable nursery school, and sent them to a free primary school. And then they let out their bungalow and moved to a very small house behind the market. Ramarao sent out a dozen applications a day and wore his feet out looking for employment. For a man approaching 40, looking for employment does not come very easily, especially when he has just lost an independent and flourishing business. Ramarao was very businesslike in stating his request. He sent his card in and asked, "I wonder, sir, if you could do something for me. My business is all gone through no fault of my own. I shall be very grateful if you can give me something to do in your office." "What a pity, Ramarao. I'm awfully sorry. There's nothing at present. If there is any opportunity, I will certainly remember you," was the stock answer he received from everyone. It was the same story everywhere. He returned home in the evening. His heart sank as he turned into his street behind the market. His wife would invariably be standing at the door with the children behind her, looking down the street. What anxious, eager faces they had! So much of trembling, hesitating, hope in their faces. They seemed always to hope that he would come back home with some magic fulfillment. As he remembered the futile way in which he searched for a job and the finality with which people dismissed him, he wished that his wife and children had less trust in him. His wife looked at his face understood, and turned in without uttering a word. The children took the cue and filed in silently. Ramarao tried to improve matters with a forced heartiness. Well, how are you all today? To which he received mumbling, feeble responses from his wife and children. It rent his heart to see them in this condition. At the extension, however, this girl would sparkle with flowers and a bright dress. She had friendly neighbors, a women's club, and everything to keep her happy there. But now she hardly had the heart or the need to change in the evenings, for she spent all her time cooped up in the kitchen. And then the children, the house in the extension had a compound, and they romped about with a dozen other children. It was possible to have numerous friends in the fashionable nursery school. But here, the children had no friends and could only play in the backyard of the house. Their shirts were beginning to show tears and frays. Formerly, they were given new clothes once in 3 months. Ramarao lay in bed and spent sleepless nights over it. All the cash in hand had now gone. Their only source of income was the small rent they were getting for their house in the extension. They shuddered to think what would happen to them if their tenant should suddenly leave. It was in this condition that Ramarao came across a journal in the Jubilee reading room. It was called The Captain. It consisted of 4 pages, and all of them were devoted to crossword puzzles. It offered every week a first prize of 4,000 rupees. For the next few days, his head was free from family cares. He was thinking intensely of his answers, whether it should be tallow or follow, whether bad or mad or sad would be most apt for a clue which said, men who are this had better be avoided. Men who are sad, bad, or mad had better be avoided. He had to choose. He hardly stopped to look at his wife and children standing in the doorway when he returned home in the evenings. Week after week, he invested a little money and sent his solutions. And every week he awaited the results with a palpitating heart. On the day a solution was due, he hung about the newsagent's shop, worming himself into his favor in order to have a look into the latest issue of The Captain without paying for it. He was too impatient to wait till the journal came on the table in the Jubilee reading room. Sometimes the newsagent would grumble, and Ramarao would pacify him with an awkward, affected optimism. Please wait. When I get a prize, I will give you 3 years subscription in advance. His heart quailed as he opened the page announcing the prize winners. Someone in Baluchistan, someone in Dhaka, someone in Ceylon had hit upon the right set of words, not Ramarao. It took 3 hours for Ramarao to recover from this shock. The only way to exist seemed to be to plunge into the next week's puzzle. That would keep him buoyed up with hope for a few days more. This violent alternating between hope and despair soon wrecked his nerves and balance. At home, he hardly spoke to anyone. His head was always bowed in thought. He quarreled with his wife if she refused to give him his rupee a week for the puzzles. She was of a mild disposition and was incapable of a sustained quarrel, with the result that he always got what he wanted though it meant a slight sacrifice in household expenses. One day, the Good Journal announced a special offer of 8,000 rupees. It excited Ramarao's vision of a future tenfold. He studied the puzzle. There were only 4 doubtful corners in it, and he might have to send in at least 4 entries. A larger outlay was indicated. "You must give me 5 rupees this week," he said to his wife, at which that good lady became speechless. He had become rather insensitive to such things these days, but even he could not help feeling the atrocious nature of his demand. 5 rupees were nearly a week's food for the family. He felt disturbed for a moment, but he had only to turn his attention to speculate whether hope or dope or rope made the most sense for the clue. Some people prefer this to despair. Prefer hope to despair, or dope to despair, or rope to despair. And his mind was at once at rest. After sending away the solutions by registered post, he built elaborate castles in the air. Even if it was only a share, he would get a substantial amount of money. He would send away his tenants, take his wife and children back to the bungalow in the extension, and leave all the money in his wife's hands for her to manage for a couple of years or so. He himself would take a 100 and go away to Madras and seek his fortune there. By the time the money in his wife's hand was spent, he would have found some profitable work in Madras. On the fateful day of results, Ramarao opened the captain, and the correct solution stared him in the face. His blunders were numerous. There was no chance of getting back even a few annas now. He moped about till the evening. The more he brooded over this, the more intolerable he became. Life seemed. All the losses, disappointments, and frustrations of his life came down on him with renewed force.